Good morning and welcome to our 7th virtual town hall devoted to 2020 planning activities here at Johns Hopkins University. And a special welcome to our undergraduate students, parents, and families participating today. I'm Janet Schreck, Associate Vice Provost for Education and faculty member in the School of Education, and I'm one of the core team members helping to lead our 2020 planning efforts. I'm delighted to be moderating the session today with 3 of our distinguished university leaders: Stephen Gange, Professor and Executive Vice Provost for Academic Affairs; Jon Links, Professor, Vice Provost, and Chief Risk and Compliance Officer; and Alana Shanahan, Vice Provost for Student Affairs. The goal for today's session is to discuss our plans for the undergraduate experience at Johns Hopkins University this fall. On Tuesday, the university released guidelines describing our plans for the academic schedule and classes, housing and dining, health and safety, and financial aid and employment for our undergraduates this fall. Assuming the public health situation remains favorable, we look forward to resuming in-person activities for our undergraduates. We also remain committed to providing maximum flexibility for those who cannot or do not wish to return to campus this fall. These are based on detailed recommendations and analysis from several work groups from our planning and steering committees, including our academic programs continuity and student life working groups composed of faculty, academic staff, and support staff from across the university, and with extensive consultation with our faculty, public health and medical experts, our student advisory committee, and the University Pandemic Academic Advisory Committee. The plans also build on previously released guidelines available on the website regarding return to campus, resumption of research, return to instruction, and screening and testing. We know that multiple aspects of this plan will continue to be developed and refined in the coming weeks. Undoubtedly, the next academic year will be different than anything we've ever experienced in our pre-COVID life at Johns Hopkins University. We know you have many questions about what the experience will look like, and we hope that you found answers to some of those questions on our JHU coronavirus information website, but recognize the critical importance of ongoing dialogue and communication as you begin to formulate your fall plans. We anticipate that this town hall and the town hall scheduled for next Tuesday at 1:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time will provide additional insights and guidance. In our announcement for this session, we asked you to send us questions beforehand and appreciate the numerous questions we've already received. Below this screen is also a box that allows you to send in questions in real time. Some of you have already found it based on what we're seeing. We will answer as many of those questions as we can that you submit. Like our other sessions, this town hall is being recorded and will be available for asynchronous viewing. We will also work to use the questions that we've received to further develop the Q&A on the coronavirus information website. So let's get started. I thought we could start first by having each of our panelists just provide a very high-level reminder of what the tenets of the plan are. Stephen, could we start with you, providing us some reminder about the basic tenets that we're planning for in terms of academic schedule and classes and some other pieces about return to campus?
Sure. Thank you, Janet, and thank you all for participating in today's town hall session. It's first important to say that the plan that we've put forward continues to be a draft. We are very much looking forward to your feedback, both at this town hall and through other mechanisms. The plan that we've put into place is trying to acknowledge the as other universities are, the extenuating circumstances that we're in. All of our plans for research reopening that have gone well over the last several weeks have given us confidence for making plans to bring students back in person in the fall. It will not be as usual. Our campus buildings and classrooms will be operating at reduced density, as will our residential housing. And we will have a set of expectations for an altered campus experience with a commitment from everyone to uphold basic public health tenets and to ensure that we're all protecting the most vulnerable within our community. In terms of the academic experience, we have proposed an altered instructional calendar for the fall. We will plan to begin at the usual scheduled time of August 31st. We had several break days that we have decided to offer instruction on that would include September 7th, Labor Day, as well as 2 fall break days in October that were previously scheduled. Our plan is to end in-person undergraduate classes on the Friday before Thanksgiving, November 20th. Thanksgiving break will continue as planned over the course of 9 days. And then on Monday, the 30th of November through the remaining time in December, we will have online or remote instruction only. And so our expectation is that will be an opportunity for those students who want to go back, travel, be home with their families. They'll have an opportunity to do so. As Alana will mention in a little bit, in terms of our residential housing, we will continue to offer options for those students who want to stay during Thanksgiving and throughout the rest of the term. The schools are hard at work right now on evaluating the academic offerings for the fall. We anticipate that the majority of our classes will be online remote modality, but we will have some degree of in-person and hybrid instruction. Generally, the large classes that we hold will be online and remote, and smaller and medium-sized classes will be either in-person or hybrid. We recognize there are some classes that we don't fit an online modality, lab classes, for example, and so our faculty are working hard for scheduling those sessions, as well as looking into alternatives for those who may have to attend those classes remotely. We really are trying to build a academic program so that students will be able to have options and continue their academic progress through online remote courses if they choose not to return to campus. We'll be offering a variety of courses. We can't promise that we'll offer everything, and certainly there are some courses that are just impossible to offer in an online remote modality, but we are working hard to make sure that there is a variety of courses so that students can make academic progress. Many things are still in the works and being planned. So for example, the actual modality of all the courses won't be completed until July 10th. And so we asked students to, particularly continuing students, to wait until the course system is updated to start making their course choices. And there are many policies that we're continuing to work on, academic policies such as grading policies and others. So that's a sketch of the academic aspects of the fall. And Jen, I'll turn things back over to you.
Thanks, Stephen. Alana, could you provide everyone with just a brief review of the plans for housing and dining for returning students?
Sure, thanks, Janet. So basically, as we think about housing our students, again, I just want to remind students that, again, if you're uncomfortable coming to campus, obviously you're not required to come to campus to advance your academic programming. Obviously, you can choose a remote option. But as far as coming to campus, if first-year students choose to come to campus, come to Baltimore, we are expecting that they live in residence. And basically those residential accommodations will occur on our campus and will include private bedrooms and limited sharing of bathrooms. There will be some suites in that inventory. So some first-year students will have the opportunity to select a roommate and select a suite living environment. And again, first year students who come to Baltimore, regardless of the academic modality they choose, so whether they choose to have an entirely online academic experience or some in-person classes, our expectation is they do live in residence with us on campus. So for second year students, again, because we've decompressed our on-campus housing inventory, we have sort of broader options for second year students. Depending on how many first year students choose to live in on-campus housing, we may have some capacity to house second year students on campus. For those that we can accommodate on campus, we've provided additional inventory in the region, basically, in local hotels and an apartment building. And if by chance, second year students aren't comfortable with the options we provide, we are allowing second year students to make their own arrangements, and we're happy to support them in that through our Office of Off-Campus Living. So this is new for second year students. They're normally required to live in residence, but this year we're providing additional flexibility for second year students if they choose not to live in JHU secured housing. And JHU secured housing off campus does include both private bedrooms and doubles. So second year students will have the opportunity to also request roommates, and they will also have limited bathroom sharing. One other piece kind of on the dining front is our dining initially will be focused on grab and go opportunities in all of our on-campus dining spaces, the Fresh Food Cafe, Nolan's, and Levering. And we're also making arrangements to provide pantry items and potentially meals in our partnerships with some local hotels that we'll be utilizing. Also, just to add, we are working diligently on transportation options so that students who reside in JHU secured housing off campus have adequate transportation to come and go to campus as they please, whether that's for meals, classes, library access, recreational activities, and the like. Back to you, Janet.
Thanks, Alana. So obviously, Jon, the health and safety of our undergraduate students and our entire campus community has been at the forefront of all of our planning and questioning. Could you tell us and remind us a little bit more about the basics about health and safety planning for when our undergraduates return to campus?
Sure, thanks. Good morning, everyone. First, I want to remind everyone that what we're talking about in terms of the fall is part of a much larger multi-phase plan. And it's important to remind you about this so that you understand the context in which we're presenting these draft plans to you. So as you may recall, we have a multi-phase plan that is in step with the state of Maryland, phases 1, 2, and 3. We're currently actually in phase 1, and that is focused on lab research on campus. What we're talking about for the fall is phase 2A. And it's very important to appreciate that everything we're saying this morning is predicated on an assumption that the conditions in a public health sense will be appropriate for us to be in phase 2A in the fall. We are constantly monitoring those conditions in the Baltimore area, the Maryland area, DC, and so on. And as things move closer to the fall, we will be reassessing whether or not we're actually going to be in phase 2A. So as you listen to our plans this morning, please remind yourselves that we're not going to do something that is unsafe just because now at the beginning of July, we've told you what our plans are. Those plans are predicated on the assumption that we will be able to be in phase 2A of our own plan. Obviously, health and safety are first and foremost in our minds. And we've built our public health control measures around 4 cornerstones: masking, distancing, hygiene, and room ventilation. And the plans for the fall, both in terms of in-person instruction, in terms of residential life, and in terms of other student activities, are built on those 4 cornerstones of public health control measures. And we strongly believe that those 4 cornerstones, when properly applied and when adhered to by students, staff, and faculty, will keep all of us safe and minimize the transmission of COVID. So masking or cloth face coverings are required both indoors and outdoors on campus. Distancing of 6 feet or more is required at all times, including outdoors on campus. Hygiene includes both personal hand hygiene as well as building, room, and other spaces hygiene that we ourselves will perform. And then room ventilation is to ensure adequate turnover of air and air exchange with fresh outdoor air in all indoor spaces that we control. Now, let me just say a word about testing. First of all, testing is critical in the medical management of those with suspected COVID. And absolutely every student, staff, or faculty member who has symptoms consistent with COVID will be tested. We have stood up what we call the Johns Hopkins COVID Call Center, JHCCC. And this call center, which we're operating in close collaboration with Johns Hopkins Medicine, performs telephone screening, referral for testing, follow-up with results of testing, what's called case investigation to identify close contacts of anyone who tests positive, contact tracing of those who are close contacts, and clinical management of students, staff, and faculty who have tested positive. That Johns Hopkins COVID call center is available to all students. And in fact, we're actively encouraging students to utilize the JHCCC instead of reaching out on their own to other healthcare providers or to the state. We are also considering the use of testing for surveillance purposes and for screening purposes, and hope to have more information on those additional uses of testing within the next several days. I finally want to mention isolation and quarantine. So anyone who tests positive will be required to isolate and will be given very specific instructions on what that isolation entails. And anyone who is deemed a close contact with significant exposure will be expected to quarantine and will also be given instructions as to what that entails. Those who are isolated and quarantined will be monitored by telephone. For residential students, students in our dorms and other university-controlled housing, we have separate set-aside spaces specifically designated for isolation and other set-aside spaces specifically designated for quarantine. Thanks.
Thank you, Jon. So let's dig into some questions that have been sent in. I think, the first round have to do with students getting more information about their fall schedule and their fall housing. So how about, Stephen, we'll start with you. Could you tell us a little bit more about the registration process and how students will know whether the courses they've already registered for are still being offered and what format classes will be offered for the fall?
Yeah, and I saw some of the questions, so let me just try to clarify. So currently, what the faculty are working with our registration staff are doing is to identify what we will be able to offer in the fall and determine the modality by which we're going to be offering those classes. That work is underway and will be completed by the 10th of July. So between now and then, if you go into our registration system, you will see things change on a regular basis. So what we're urging is continue, let that continue to bring that to completion on July 10th. What we are doing is ensuring that you will be able to tell what will be a online asynchronous course. Those will be courses that have a time of being online, or a location that says online and no time listed for the class. That will distinguish those courses that are synchronous, which will say online with a particular time, from those classes that are given in person. So we're making those modifications now. And so I would encourage all students to hold off until making registration changes until then. Our advising staff has been intimately part of these discussions. They're prepared to help students modify, continuing students modify their registration and course load after the 10th. Our new transfer students and our new first year students will be registering after that point. And so you should be able to get a very good sense of what your fall schedule will look like after that time.
Thanks, Stephen. Alana, I think there are a lot of questions coming in about timing, about housing decisions. So when will freshmen and sophomores know more about where they're going to be housed? And I think also some questions about thoughts about move-in, what that might look like.
Great, thanks, Janet. So just to take from Stephen's comments, our hope obviously with housing is to allow you the opportunity to make an informed decision based on your course schedule. So we've aligned sort of the housing process to mirror in some respects the course selection process. So basically between July 10th and July 22nd, we're asking first and second year students to provide us with their intentions around housing. For first year students who choose to come to Baltimore, the expectation is that you live in our community on campus. So for you, it's just a question of selecting your preference as far as building on campus, whether or not you want a suite mate, and all of that will be outlined for you in our sort of housing intentions form, which will come to you again in that window from July 10th to July 22nd. So you will have that window to sort of think about what you want from your housing experience. The same window applies for second year students as well, for you to share your intentions. I will say if you're a second year student who knows right now that you would be interested in living off campus, ideally in Charles Village, you're free to make that decision now. And our Office of Off-Campus Housing is happy to work with you to facilitate that. But obviously we would love for you to consider living in JHU secured housing, as that housing will come with a lot of the amenities that would normally come with on-campus housing, i.e. kind of Wi-Fi and laundry, and obviously RAs and professional staff that live in those additional residential buildings. So our hope is, again, for students who are contemplating housing, for you really to make your decisions between July 10th and July 22nd. Again, all first year students should feel assured that they will be living on campus. So it's just a question of you will receive your assignment thereafter, which will likely happen late July and through August. For second year students, again, there is an outside chance, depending on how many students in the first and second year class choose to come to class, or I'm sorry, choose to have an on-campus sort of academic experience or choose to be in Baltimore. If our capacity exceeds our inventory, there is an outside chance we would need to utilize kind of a lottery for the people who would get on campus with JHU secured housing. So that information, should be available by the end of July. So we would be coming back to you at the end of July and saying, Unfortunately, we were not able to house you in JHU secured housing, but we were absolutely prepared to help you navigate identifying off-campus housing that you're comfortable with. And again, we're hopeful that doesn't happen, but I do want to share that that is a possibility. But the month of July will be a huge month as far as timing for making housing decisions. As far as move-in is a bit of a challenge at the moment, as you may appreciate. This is the year we were hoping to move to a one-day move-in, but in the context of the pandemic and needing to be socially distanced and having obviously a lot more kind of housing inventory and spaces to accommodate, move-in will be a multi-day process. Again, we're still likely looking towards the end of August, but there are still pieces that will impact move-in. Some of that may be what we think about in the testing context. Some of that, again, is depending on how many people choose an on-campus experience may dictate how many days move-in needs to happen to ensure social distancing. So I wish I could give more definitive dates as far as move-in, but again, we will likely by the end of July, once all the housing kind of inventory and decisions have come in, be able to provide you a much better sense of the precise days around move-in. But at this point, it's a little bit of a moving target, unfortunately, but I believe for likely all the right reasons.
Thanks, Alana. Jon, we had a number of questions from parents and students wondering about self-quarantine, either requirements or recommendations when they arrive to campus. Should they be coming 2 weeks early? Will they have to stay in their dorms for the first 2 weeks? Could you give us some insight to that question?
Sure. So naturally, we're discussing all of this. And in the mix of our discussions are asking students to quarantine for 2 weeks ahead of coming to campus, as well as thinking through the implications of a 2-week quarantine on campus. And if we want to do a 2-week quarantine, when do we have move-in relative to the start of the semester? The easiest thing to say is that we will be following all state rules. So if our Governor Larry Hogan, says that persons coming from the following 5 states must quarantine for 2 weeks, then obviously we will insist on such students and others coming to our campus from those states to have in fact quarantined for that period of time. Beyond that, we hope to be making decisions again in the next few days. We actually see the quarantine approach as being related to the testing approach that we may use for screening purposes. So stay tuned.
Thanks, Jon. Stephen, we've also had a number of questions about if a student decides that they don't or can't return this fall, can they take a leave of absence, or is there an opportunity for them to return in the spring only? Could you give us some insight on that question?
Sure. So the processes for first years for deferring, as well as for leave of absence for second years and above, remains the same. Students that wish to choose to do that have an opportunity to do so. It is reviewed by our advising staff, but that is certainly an option for students. I see some questions about winter and spring, and I'll say that we have made no decisions yet about either winter intersession or the format for next spring. Our focus has been on planning for fall, and those will be issues that we now consider now that we have an initial draft for what fall looks like.
Thanks, Stephen. I have another question for you. We have a very significant number of international students that come to Johns Hopkins, and we know that there's a lot of confusion and lack of clarity about what we can do for them. Can you talk a little bit about what we know about that situation right now and what we know we've put in place for international students to be able to continue their education with us?
Yeah, thanks. So I'm highly sympathetic. I'm a parent of a student who studies internationally myself. I think we all recognize that there are, a number of significant issues regarding international students. One is, obtaining visas. We continue to monitor and hear the difficulties with scheduling appointments overseas for actually getting visas. There are still regulations in place that bar travel that have not been lifted. And then there are just continuing travel disruptions as well. And so I'll say, for our international students, that they should, if they want to keep up to date, look at the FAQ page on our Office of International Students page, ois.jehu.edu, that has general information, up-to-date information on the current federal guidelines, visa issues, and other guidance that we're getting. Many students have very individualized circumstances that makes it hard to generalize, particularly given how many different countries are involved. So we highly encourage you to contact OIS, certainly prior to any travel or any change in any of your plans for fall.
Stephen, we did have a couple of questions about students, who did have to return emergently in the spring and experienced a lot of challenges around synchronous classes with big time zone differences. Can you talk a little bit about how faculty have been preparing for that this fall?
So a couple ways, I think that there's a broad realization that what we had to do in the spring term was largely just to ensure that we could continue standard operations. And I think that it's fair to say that there were a number of faculty who had not had extensive experience teaching in an online modality. We, I think, did a very, good job, as many universities did, with providing resources and ensuring that they were appropriately prepared for continuing their classes in the spring. And we are greatly ramping up those preparations through the summer in preparation for fall. So we are, as I said before, working with each faculty member to determine the right modality for their class. We are ensuring that they have the training, expanded training in how to ensure that they are using the most up-to-date pedagogy and use of tools as appropriate. We've made significant investments in technology that we're implementing this summer across the university in use of new equipment, use of studios, a very, I think, innovative idea that helps to both faculty in enhancing their teaching experience as well as a student experience, is to set up studios so that there is a more natural way of instructing than this kind of, seated at a table Zoom kind of instruction. So we are transforming a number of our classroom spaces to expand the technology capacity and enhancing the training and support for faculty in the fall. So I do think that, again, many faculty approached this for the first time. I really think they did an admirable job, and everyone was very keen on ensuring a high academic, high quality academic experience. I think that we'll be able to continue that in the fall.
Thanks, Stephen. Alana, I'm going to shift to you. We've had a number of questions coming in with some asking for a little bit more specificity around move-in and orientation dates. So for move-in, several parents asking, do you think they will still be able to help their children move in? And then will we have the traditional orientation and parent activities that we usually have?
Sure. So orientation will really be a hybrid experience. I think what you should expect is a lot of the content will be delivered virtually. In addition, the orientation experience will be elongated. We'll basically start some orientation programming, particularly having first-year students meet their new first-year mentor in the month of July. So the orientation window will be stretched, and the majority of programming will be offered virtually. As students do come back to campus, we will have some small group orientation programming, obviously appropriately social distanced or physically distanced, that really do require sort of an in-person experience to have meaningful dialogue. So whether that's conversations around diversity and inclusion, whether those are conversations around community standards, potentially alcohol and other drugs, there are some topics that are just infinitely more fruitful to have in an in-person setting. But obviously those will be limited. Most of sort of the lecture type programming that we run traditionally in person will be converted to a virtual format. So the orientation experience, the content delivered will be comparable and in some respects enhanced, but it will be delivered via both modalities, virtual as well as some limited in person. I'm sorry, Jana, what was the other piece?
Can parents
help?
Oh,
move in.
Yeah, move in.
Got it. Sorry. So move-in will be tricky. Our thought process now is to really limit move-in to the student. And what we're hoping to do is encourage families actually to ship students' belongings so that our staff can actually better manage, in essence, students' belongings making their way to their room without a huge influx of people coming to campus. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we already have challenges about a socially distanced move-in, physically distanced move-in. When we just think about students participating, as we think about families participating, it further complicates the math there and sadly likely puts all of us at further risk. So our thought process now is really to limit involvement in move-in to anybody really beyond the student. Obviously, parents can transport their student here, but parents shouldn't expect to be entering dorms at this point, just to again limit kind of personal interactions.
Another question for you, Alana. I know we've added some inventory for second year students. Are you able to share any more information about the location of some of those or what that looks like? I think some of our parents and students are questioning how different that would be than typical on-campus housing. And if there'd be a difference in room rate for those types of locations as compared to living in traditional dorms on campus.
Right, so I will encourage families to revisit the website where we do actually outline the names of the properties, but just kind of as a quick briefing, there are a couple of hotels, the Colonnade, which is pretty much on the Hopkins campus on University Parkway, adjacent to Homewood Field. There's a property called the Delta Cross Keys, which is about 3 miles from campus. And there's a property called the Woodbury Apartments, which is about 2.4 miles from campus. So all of the properties are relatively proximate. And as I mentioned earlier, we're working on robust sort of transportation options to these properties and obviously to campus. The Colonnade will have both single and double rooms. So again, some second year students will be in a position to have a roommate. Again, we ask those that choose to have a roommate to think about what that means from a standpoint of keeping one another safe and being assured that as roommates, you're thinking about kind of your exposure and your activity and how do you ensure that you're keeping one another healthy. Again, first year student, that's the Colonnade will have both singles and doubles. The Delta Cross Keys will have both singles and doubles. The Woodbury Apartments have in essence suites. So you can, you have private bedrooms, but in essence, you can live in a suite with someone. So I think for second year students, really there is a myriad of options as far as how you can think about your living arrangements. And again, there is a chance that some second year students, we may have inventory on campus. So consider that as well. And back to first year students, again, everything on campus, everything will be a private bedroom on campus with limited bathroom sharing. So where first year students have the opportunity to share a living space with someone is really in that suite environment. We won't have shared bedrooms for first year students, but we will have suite opportunities where, again, 2 students can live in a suite, each with their own private bedroom, but sharing a bathroom. I'm hopeful that covers it. But again, the detail on those properties is on the website, and feel free to search those properties independently to learn a bit more about kind of the hotels, the locations, as well as the Woodbury apartments.
Thanks. The next set of questions I think are probably both for Jon and Alana. And, you know, we're obviously hoping that no one gets sick if and when they come back to campus, but should a student become sick with COVID while they're here, Jon, what's the protocol? What would happen? How would they get tested? What would the university do to support them? And I think we should probably cover all the ranges of first year through seniors, because we definitely have a difference in students living in on-campus housing versus not. I don't know who wants to start off. Maybe Jon, you might want to take a first shot.
Sure. So every student will go through the Johns Hopkins COVID call center. It starts with a telephone screen, and then if criteria are met for medical diagnostic testing, that will also be arranged and happen through Johns Hopkins Hospital. The results will be returned to the student. If it's a positive test result, the student will, of course, receive a lot of instruction around isolation. The student will receive clinical management through Johns Hopkins, meaning follow-up, monitoring, calls, etc. And we will also determine what other students or staff or faculty were in close contact with that student who tested positive. And those other students or staff or faculty will also receive a call and be given instructions around quarantine. So that's true for all students. It is also true for all students that they will be able to have access through student health if they have other concerns or need follow-up care or monitoring. For students who are residential students, that is first and second year undergraduate students who are in the housing we own or control, including the hotels and apartment building that Alana mentioned, we will be responsible for where those students isolate and quarantine. And as I said earlier, we have set aside specific rooms for isolation and other specific rooms for quarantine for our residential students. For students who are living on their own off campus, we are unfortunately not able to offer our set aside rooms for isolation and quarantine. We only have a set number of those that's dependent on the size of our residential student population. But those students who are not residential will still absolutely be able to go through the Johns Hopkins COVID call center and utilize student health services.
Thanks so much, Jon. Stephen, related to that same question, or as a secondary piece, what kind of supports do we have academically for students who might become ill and need to step out of class or not participate in class for a couple of weeks? Could you talk a little bit about how we've prepared faculty and how faculty are working to address those issues also?
Sure. So I think everyone's aware of the need to be flexible. As I indicated, the both the decision to return to campus or not to return to campus is heavily weighing on our preparations, and we are trying to prepare for as much remote instruction as possible. And that may be, as we've talked about, a student who's overseas, who is attending classes, and faculty are aware there may be, and I've seen some questions from some of the international students about concerns with time differences. That's where we are thinking to try to help faculty with as much asynchronous material, doing recordings, for example, so they can be available at any time to the extent possible. Certainly, a number of smaller seminar classes may be require a face-to-face interaction or a real-time interaction. And so faculty are thinking about the right pedagogy for their classes. But it may also be remote for students who are in Baltimore or students who are in isolation or quarantine. And so, that again, the systems that we're building are trying to be robust and acknowledge all of these different scenarios that may be occurring in the fall, as well as been brought up, the preparation in case things get to a point where we can't offer in-person classes, to make sure we can continue instruction as well.
Stephen, I'm going to stick with you for a couple of other questions related to academics and classes. We've had some questions about grading. Has the university made any decisions to alter grading policies for the fall semester?
The short answer is no. So the decision about grading is really not a university decision, it's a school specific decision. As I've indicated, the faculty and dean's offices have been working to get the plan in place. They have not taken up the issue of grading policies yet. I do know, I would say the undergraduate schools have not taken that up. Some of the graduate schools, I'm aware, have already made a decision that they will continue regular grading policies.
A couple more questions for you, Stephen, related to research opportunities for undergraduates in the fall. Do we have any additional information about those?
So what we did with research over the last several weeks is ask each of our principal investigators to put together a plan that would integrate, at least for the first phase, graduate students, postdocs, and ensure that they are adhering to our density requirements in creative ways. The use of shifts, the use of other ways of de-densifying labs has been part of those plans. We've been pleased at how those plans have been executed. Overall, I think the feedback coming in is that faculty, students, and staff are taking all of our guidance seriously and working in a less dense environment. So what Denny Wirtz, our vice provost for research, has done is worked with his research team, research committee, to propose a series of guidelines that would incorporate undergraduate students into those plans. And so what will be done is for asking, again, the principal investigators to think about how can they incorporate undergraduates safely. Recognizing that, balancing the fact that we know that research is one of the key reasons that many students are interested in Johns Hopkins. So we want to ensure, to the extent possible and to the extent that that is safe, that we're allowed to or enabled to provide those opportunities. It may be that we can't provide as many opportunities because of the de-densified setting. We will certainly prioritize those students that have research as part of their academic expectations, so there will be no doubt that they will be able to make continued progress. There may be, and all of this is really focused on in-person research. There will certainly be opportunities for students remotely or even in a remote capacity to still engage in some aspects of research. It might be literature review, it might be other aspects that aren't exactly hands-on, but are still an important part of the research training.
Two more quick questions for you, Stephen. In a similar vein, you mentioned literature reviews, and we've had some questions about whether the library will be open for students.
So the library operations just, and many of you may have seen the operations just instituted a new plan to provide access to their research holdings, as well as other book access in a remote fashion. The library team is working on a plan that would allow for, in the same way of our classrooms, our labs, our other parts of our campus, some return in a de-densified manner. So those plans are currently underway.
Thanks. Alana, we've had some questions also about just student life activities, student run groups. How will those be happening in the fall? Will there be other opportunities outside of academics for our students?
Absolutely, Janet. We're doing our best to think about how we support students, obviously, in their experience outside the classroom. So whether it's student activities, student organizations, we're thinking quite a bit about how do we support students who are interested in those activities, who may be on campus, but also participating in the academic experience remotely. So our student life team is spending quite a bit of time in their work groups, thinking about how do we facilitate these activities that students are really passionate about and are a huge value add to their academic experience. So and even things, as significant as campus traditions, how do we think about campus traditions like lighting of the quad and spring fair, and how can we convert some of these traditions to ways that are safe, but yet still meaningful for students? So please know that our student life team is spending a lot of time talking about how do we support students in their continued passion around the organizations and activities that they're invested in. I would also add that we're spending a lot of time thinking about space considerations. Obviously a lot of meetings have had some success, particularly student organization meetings, transitioning to a Zoom format, but we do appreciate that at some point Zoom gets exhausting, and we want to provide opportunities for students to congregate safely in small groups. So we're contemplating some significant enhancements to campus spaces. How do we increase the number of campus spaces where students can congregate safely, knowing that your dorm rooms are significantly de-densified and our residence halls are significantly de-densified. So we're spending some time looking at how do we convert some outdoor spaces into compelling spaces you may choose to gather, whether it's, again, your student organization or just an informal group of friends, as well as potentially some temporary structures that could accommodate larger groups of students, whether it's for dining overflow when we get to a point where we can actually have dining in a more meaningful way, or even, some thoughts around potential for kind of library overflow and other spaces that are heavily utilized by our students and quite popular. How do we ensure that we're creating spaces given some of the challenges we'll face within the limitation around residential spaces? So spending a lot of time thinking about that and ensuring that the non-academic experience of being a college student at JHU is as meaningful as it's ever been.
Just two quick other questions for you, Alana. One is we've had a number of students, particularly international students, who are assuming they're not going to be able to come in residence in the fall. Would there be housing available to them if they decide to come in the spring semester or are able to come in the spring semester?
Yeah, our hope is, again, to do our best to work with students. We want to provide opportunities for anybody who chooses to be here to be here. So again, given that the context of our public health situation may change, we don't have the exact plan baked for what the incorporation of students for spring semester will look like. But what I want people to have confidence in is we're going to do our best to accommodate any student who chooses to join our community, whether it's at the start of the fall or at the start of the spring. And I also just want to add that, again, students, there may be students who are uncomfortable with what we're talking about in the housing context. Some students who may want to request an accommodation, whether that's a second-year student who feels based on their circumstances, they desperately need to be in JHU secured housing, or possibly a first-year student who may have a health condition who just does not feel comfortable being on campus. There is a process for you to communicate those concerns. So whether it's a health condition or just a hardship, we do want students working with us and talking to us, whether that's via the Student Disability Services Office for those that are looking potentially for a health accommodation, or for students who may have another hardship, working with our housing office, as well as potentially our financial aid office. So I do want to ensure that students have options if what we've currently outlined feels uncomfortable to them in meaningful ways.
Thanks. We only have a couple minutes left, and we had a number of questions, Jon, regarding what are we looking at? What types of data is Johns Hopkins monitoring that would suggest we might alter our plans? And, how tied to the state phasing is our decision to actually welcome students back on campus in the fall? So could you just, as we get close to closing, kind of remind everyone of those decision-making pieces?
Sure. So we have a set of our own metrics that we're tracking. Some of the metrics have to do with the public health conditions in the surrounding areas. So the number of new cases, hospitalizations, ICU admissions, deaths, and so on, the things that you see every night on the news that states are tracking. We have additional metrics having to do with our own operational capacities around testing, contact tracing, isolation and quarantine, the fraction of our affiliates who are affected, and so on. We have a faculty-based health advisory group that is working with us. I should mention, at the outset, Stephen and I were introduced as professors. We're professors of public health. So in addition to being academic administrators, public health is what we do for a living, and it obviously infuses all the decision-making on the administrative side. As we get closer to the fall, we will be looking at the conditions on campus, in Baltimore and Maryland and DC, and throughout the country. And that will be influencing our thinking about starting the fall the way we're describing it now. During the semester, we will be absolutely very actively and continuously monitoring the conditions, and will be poised to make difficult decisions if conditions are showing a significant flare-up in the pandemic. So we're not locked in at any point to a particular course of action. With respect to the state, we will never be ahead of the state, but we may very well be behind the state, that is, in a more conservative posture. We're going to do what we think is best in terms of health and safety.
Thanks, Jon. And I'm looking at the clock and I'm recognizing that it's now 10 o'clock. And so we're going to actually close this town hall session. And I want to close by thanking everyone who's participated today. While we had literally hundreds of questions come in, and I know that we weren't able to answer every one of your questions, but we do hope that this session has been able to provide further clarity to the extensive planning efforts completed to safely resume the undergraduate experience in the fall. This session was recorded and an archive will be provided on the JHU coronavirus website. We encourage you to visit that webpage often and regularly in the coming days and weeks for timely, updated, accurate information about fall plans. We also welcome your comments, feedback, and questions via that website and hope you will visit it regularly. As I mentioned earlier, this discussion will continue in a second town hall scheduled for next Tuesday, July 7th at 1:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Until then, please remember to keep adhering to good public health measures. Wash your hands often, avoid close contact, and maintain physical distancing, and keep wearing a face covering when in public. Keep safe, and we look forward to seeing you at our next town hall.